Well, hey, church, it's so good to just be continuing our conversation talking about parenting. And I've invited some special guests here today. Danny and Penny Meyer are joining us to talk about this topic of parenting as we've been looking at Ephesians 6, 1 through 4. And Danny and Penny, I'm just so thankful that you guys joined us. You guys have been you are parents yourself. You're grandparents, right?
Yes.
Some of your grandchildren, I think, are almost to adulthood right now.
Yeah.
Indeed. And for those of you who don't know, Danny and Penny, they are the founding pastors of VCDC. And so in a lot of ways, they are spiritual father, spiritual mother to so many of us here at the church. And so I'm so glad we could just sit down and have this conversation. I'm glad you're with us.
To be here.
It is.
Yeah.
It is so good.
Good. We'll just kind of jump right in, as we're looking at Ephesians 6, 1 through 4, it really addresses, rather than being children, that children would have been in the audience hearing this letter being read, and it really addresses to them, hey, how important it is for you children to honor and obey your parents. So just talk to us a little bit about not how important that is, not just to be good kids and follow the rules, but why is it so important that our children are honoring and obeying parents?
Kick that off.
Okay. Well, first of all, we're honored to be here too. And the one thing, we looked at these questions and we thought we could spend the whole time on question one. So we're going to just barely cover it. But, that whole idea of teaching our children to honor their parents, I just can't tell you how important that is. That is really good for children to learn that there are people that they need to honor. And basically the word in the original language just means to show respect for good things. And, I've noticed that a lot of children don't know how to do that today. And, it helps them understand that the world does not completely revolve around them when they begin to learn that they need to honor their parents. And that carries over in life. It carries over to their school teachers, to their college professors, to their bosses in work. And some people have never learned that, and they can't keep a job. And, it's just so important for us to teach our children to honor their parents. Yeah. And also, I think we need to live as parents, and we're going to talk more about this, in a way that can be easy to honor. Of course, we're going to make mistakes along the way, and we'll talk more about that. But we need to really ask the Lord to help us to live in a way that would be honoring to Him.
Yeah, I think that's really excellent. I think that the challenge, in parenting and most of life, is it's issues of finding the right balance.
Yeah.
If this was the only verse in the Bible, it would it would bring about a certain response. But I think the key in training and teaching our children to honor their parents, one has to understand, as you look at the rest of the scripture, is that happens in the context of love and acceptance.
Yeah.
If you're just teaching obedience or honoring your parents, or don't talk back, or don't ask questions, or don't ask why, I think you miss the thrust of it. The thrust of the scriptures and these passages in particular is that we want, as Penny said, we want to train the kids to be able to do well in life, and they're going to constantly find themselves in situations, sometimes with good, kind, just, fair employers, parents, and friends and spouses, and at times they may not.
Yes.
But we want to be able to train ourselves and train our kids to be able to have some self-control, to be able to not have to have their way, not have to react. And but to think about that, and I think this is just important on this particular verse, to think about teaching them to honor or to be obedient has to take place in an environment where they feel loved, where they feel accepted, where they feel like my parents do want to hear me, but that's not we're not relinquishing as parents our right to be parents just because
Mhm.
a child, feels, well, I don't think you heard me. I don't feel accepted.
Mhm.
It's a balance, and
Mhm.
it's it's sort of like a pendulum. It's impossible
Mhm.
to find that perfect balance, but we're just being aware. I
Mhm.
want to train them to do well in life.
Yeah.
I want them to also feel surrounded by an environment that's conducive, that would enable them to want to learn how to
Mhm.
control their own thoughts, temper,
Yeah.
words,
Yeah.
and actions.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And it really is, we are in our own kids, we're their first experience of what a parent is like. And
Mhm.
so then to turn to look to God as Father,
Mhm.
Yeah.
how important that is. If it's just
Exactly.
about obedience
Mhm.
and not about love
Yeah.
and acceptance as well, then we
Mhm.
miss hugely
Yeah.
on the,
Mhm.
or have the wrong idea of who God is.
That's
Right.
so true.
Right, and the basic
Mhm.
rule in relationships, whether it's with God or with human
Mhm.
beings, parents, with children, is that real obedience, real
Mhm.
honoring comes out of relationship. It
Mhm.
flows out of
It
intimacy.
really
It
does.
flows out of trust.
Mhm.
So that if we provide that,
Mhm.
it gives them a foundation. It
Mhm.
gives them that model that they can
Yeah.
live with.
That's
Yeah.
wonderful.
And I think also just focusing more on their heart.
Yes.
Oftentimes Danny and I talked about when we were raising our kids that it's really easy just to focus on the outward appearance of honoring, but their heart was far from that.
Right.
Mhm.
And to really work with them on allowing the Lord to touch their
Mhm.
hearts,
Right.
and we have to submit to God,
Mhm.
like you said, as our Father and
Mhm.
honor Him, even
good.
sometimes when we don't understand.
Right, totally. Yeah, I know with my own kids, like, as I'm a parent, and sometimes they'll be obedient, but they're doing it
Yeah.
with an angry face, and their heart is showing on their face.
Yes.
Sure.
And for me to say, hey, I understand, I appreciate that you're doing what I asked you to do,
Yeah.
but actually I'm more concerned about where your heart's at
Oh
right
man,
now.
that's
Yeah.
excellent.
Because that is
So good.
showing, okay, you're willing to be obedient, sort of, but if
Mhm.
I wasn't asking, or if my back was turned, you wouldn't be doing this. And so we need to address the deeper issue.
Yeah.
Exactly. In fact, one thought on that I want to elaborate on. I'll let you tease it out over the next number of years. But I think for parents, it's probably more important to train to discipline attitude
Yeah.
than actions.
Yep.
Mhm.
You have to sometimes discipline in action. Writing, or using crayons on the wall. When you're an infant, that's fine. But when they're 15, 16 years old,
Still drawing
sometimes
walls.
you have-
That might be an issue.
you sometimes have to address actions, but it's attitude that
Mhm.
causes more problems for human beings,
Mhm.
adults,
Yeah.
and children.
It's
It's the
really
attitude that
good,
causes
yeah.
more problems in life
Mhm.
than
Yeah.
than our actions, what we
Yeah.
actually do more often than not.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's good. So let's flip side here. Let's talk about parents, because then in Ephesians 6:4, Paul starts addressing, he says fathers, but other translations just say
Mhm.
parents.
Mhm.
So we'll kind of talk about it from that perspective. But, he talks about them, how important it is not to provoke our children in anger, to exasperate them, depending on the version you're
Mhm.
using. But I know for me as a parent, there's so many times where I look back and I think, oh, I did not handle that well. Like I didn't, like I overreacted, So
Mhm.
so talk to us about the importance of what do we do in a situation where we realize, hey, I have reacted, and how
Mhm.
important is it to to tease out with our kids, to go to them, to ask forgiveness,
Mhm.
to repent of that.
Well,
What do we do?
I think that is the key, is that we have the opportunity to be real. And when we're parents aren't just, obviously as parents, if you've been a parent for more than 15, 20 minutes, you realize that you're not going to do it perfectly.
So
And that's
true.
part of, in some sense, that's part of God's design, that we can
Mhm.
model how we deal with
Yeah.
our own brokenness,
Yeah.
how we deal with overreacting, how we deal with
Mhm.
not listening, or whatever it may be.
Mhm.
So I don't think being good parents means that we don't make mistakes, that we don't
So
overreact,
true.
we don't underreact.
Mhm.
I think being good parents means that we can go to our children.
Mhm.
I couldn't even possibly count
Mhm.
how many memories I have of going to each of my kids at
Mhm.
various times, at various ages,
Mhm.
saying, I'm really sorry. What I said was true, how I said it
Yeah.
or the way in which I approached it was really not
Yeah.
appropriate. And I'm sorry that offended you. I'm not sorry that we had to have that conversation,
Uh-huh.
but I'm sorry how I acted
Yeah.
in that conversation. Please forgive me. And doing that is of tremendous value.
Yeah.
So that parents oftentimes put themselves under undue
Yeah.
pressure, thinking that we can't make a mistake, we
Yeah.
can't do something wrong,
Right.
when actually it's the making of the mistakes and doing things
Uh-huh.
wrong
Yeah.
that is part of, and maybe the
Mhm.
most significant part of the training.
Yeah.
And I would encourage all of you parents that are in the midst of it just to take a deep breath, relax, and know that you will make a lot of mistakes. The one thing that Danny and I have always said, there's a lot of talk about dysfunctional homes.
Yeah.
Well, the reality is we all have dysfunctional
Isn't
homes.
that true?
Some are more dysfunctional than others, but we are all sinners saved by grace,
Right.
that God is still not finished with us yet.
Right.
And so it is so important to accept that, but then continue growing. I know I asked a couple of my kids this week, I said, what kind of things caused you to look back and see those things as good memories? And I know our daughter said, that I watched you and Dad just continue to grow. You continued to grow,
Yeah,
and that you didn't just have all this head knowledge about the Bible, but that you continue to grow in intimacy with Jesus.
Yeah.
And it's so, so important. I cannot, overstate how important modeling that is.
Yeah.
And our
That's good.
children see much more by our actions than
Right.
what we say. Unfortunately, they do. You wish they don't pay attention to my actions.
Right.
Yeah.
We're always like, ah.
I know, but
Yeah.
they do. They watch how you live
Right.
and showing just how you honor the Lord, how you honor other
Yeah.
people, how you speak of other people
Right.
is
It's
so important.
And part of that, this verse in particular that talks about not exasperating
Yeah,
our children, one of the thoughts that just comes to mind that I find for myself is that oftentimes when I get to that place of impatience or where I'm just not giving them the space that's needed in that particular moment, it's usually because I lose track, number one, of what I'm trying to do, which is train.
Yeah.
But more often than not, I'm losing track of the fact that parenting, like most everything in life, is a marathon. And I'm usually focused on how they're responding, how they're behaving, how in this moment isn't what it should be. But I forget, okay, better that I look at how are they doing over a period of time? Are they showing over the last number of months, motion, movement, ups and downs, where they're maturing, where they're developing, where they're getting it, rather than each interaction being a isolated incident. And sometimes it's better just to say, this didn't go over well, but they're tired. Or this didn't go over well, but I'm tired.
Yeah.
So, but tomorrow's another day,
Yes.
and not everything has to be accomplished
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
each moment.
Uh-huh.
Right.
And one last thing I want to say about that, I was raised in a Christian home, but one of the negative things was that my father often would exasperate us to anger as children. And we've talked about that by not ever allowing us to say anything when he would give us a command. He felt like that's what the Bible taught. And so sometimes I just want, I want to know the whys behind.
Yeah.
And I would remember saying, can you explain to me why I can't do that? And my father would say, no, because I said so.
Right.
And
Right. We've all heard
boy,
that, right?
I would just be, beat red with anger. And later he apologized to us for that. He said, I look back on that and that wasn't good.
Yeah.
And, we told each other we loved each other. He said, I loved you all so much.
Right.
And I was trying to show love in the best way that I
Right.
could.
Right.
But things like that can really exasperate our
Right.
children to anger.
Right. Yeah, and that's so good. And seeing it as long-term teachable moments.
Yes.
Mhm.
that we want the long term, and not just the short term behavior or fix this or
Mhm.
you get this, pull this together,
Yeah.
but that we're trying to train our children, right?
Yes,
And that takes
that's
time. It is that marathon.
Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
And so, and teasing that out just a little bit more, but you're talking about, it goes on to talk about how important it is to train our children in the instruction of the Lord. And
Mhm.
so,
Wow.
just, talk to us about, we raised
Mhm.
3 kids,
Yeah.
all walking with the Lord, and I know them all a little bit,
Uh-huh.
One's a missionary, one's a counselor, one's a church planner, pastor. And so you got these 3, kids. But I know it hasn't always been that easy. I know
Yeah.
they've had seasons
Mhm.
where that wasn't always the case, just knowing them personally a little bit. But talk just to us about how important that is of making
Yeah.
that a really,
Mhm.
we know we want to raise our kids to be good citizens, and we want to raise
Right.
them to be healthy
do.
individuals and
Mhm.
respectful and all those
Yeah.
kinds of things. But just about
Uh-huh.
Well, I think that's
Mhm.
true, and your point that where our kids are today and where they
Mhm.
have arrived at wasn't a direct path.
No.
And again, it's allowing there to be
Mhm.
them finding who they are, and I think that's why
Mhm.
when the scriptures talk about raising your children up in the way they should go,
Mhm.
you're understanding there's a variety of temperaments.
Yes.
Some of our children are rather uh, more relaxed and more shy or more compliant.
Mhm.
Other ones of our kids were a
Mhm.
lot more challenging and so
I won't
on.
ask you to name which
Yeah,
one.
right.
We all
Yeah,
do that.
you all would know. But the reality is
Mhm.
it's allowing them
Yeah.
to be who they are,
Yes.
but helping to shape.
Yeah,
And to that
shape.
end,
Mhm.
I think part of the training
Mhm.
is just what Penny is referring to, where you are helping them to understand the why. It's not just
Mhm.
because they want to know why,
Yeah.
or because
God said
they're
so.
they're
Yeah.
exactly. It's not just saying
Mhm.
because I said so. Someone once told me when I was a very very young parent, realize when you're raising your kids, really what you need to be thinking about is you're raising your grandchildren. In other words, I want my kids to understand how to be good parents themselves.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
a lot of parenting
Mhm.
is saying, no, I really don't want you to go to that
Mhm.
party.
Yeah.
And I want you to understand, here are the reasons why. And I understand
Mhm.
that's frustrating you, but here are the reasons why I can't let you go to that particular
Mhm.
party or
Mhm.
whatever it may be. And I explain the principles. And it's not just because I'm trying to convince them,
Mhm.
but I'm trying to impart to them, I'm trying
Yeah.
to train them
Yes.
to understand
Mhm.
how to come to conclusions.
Mhm.
And acknowledging to them, this may not be
Mhm.
fair, it may not be the right decision as
Mhm.
to this particular
Yeah.
case, and someday I may have to come back and ask your forgiveness,
Uh-huh.
but at this point, here's how I've
Yes.
come. When Mom and I have talked about it, it just doesn't seem like it's a
Mhm.
good idea for these reasons.
Yeah.
And when you raise children, hopefully you'll take that into
Yeah.
account.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. And to be doing that developmentally appropriate. Like, I'm not going to
Yes.
sit down my 2-year-old
Exactly.
and explain in deep,
Exactly.
Yeah, no, you don't
you know,
want to do
whatever.
that.
But there are ways to
Mhm.
do that in simple ways.
Mhm.
Exactly
that
right.
they can understand. And then obviously as they're older,
Yeah.
Sure.
they can comprehend more of where you're going.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that word training is huge because it gives the idea of training over a long
Yeah.
period of time, and that we really are training our
Mhm.
children. We're not just making them obey us for that time, that day, but we're really trying to, if we can think in terms of imparting into our
Mhm.
children things that will be tools for their life.
Mhm.
But the other thing I wanted to say about that, it says training in the way of the Lord.
Mhm.
And that is huge because I know I can speak, Danny and I were talking about this last night. I can speak from personal experience that my mom
Mhm.
really had a wonderful walk with Jesus.
Yeah, wonderful.
And that really impacted my
Mhm.
life, really more than anything she could have done. We had our, Bible studies and as a family, and I don't even hardly remember any of the topics or anything. But boy, I remember
Mhm.
my mom when she wasn't perfect. She
Sure.
was a fiery
Sure.
woman, and there were times that she'd lose her temper with us, and then she would come to us and she'd say, guys, I really am getting kind of out of control, and I need to go spend some time with the Lord.
Wow.
And she'd go and she'd say, just leave me alone for a little bit.
Yeah.
And she'd give us something to do. And she'd
Yeah.
go into the bedroom and spend
Mhm.
time in there. And I remember going and thinking, what does she do in there?
what does that mean? Spend
Yeah.
time with the Lord.
And I would open the door a little bit. And
Mhm.
I would see her with the word open and just
Yeah.
poring over the word. Sometimes I would see her on her knees
Yeah.
beside the bed,
Yeah.
just praying, and sometimes tears were being
Yeah.
shed. But when she would come
Mm.
out of that room, we all saw that she was a different person.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I remember thinking, wow,
Mhm.
Yeah.
she knows God.
Wow. And just this, like that she was modeling it for you, but she didn't even know she was modeling
She
it.
had no
Because
idea.
She didn't know you were peeking through the
No,
crack. And like,
no.
so just, yeah, that's amazing.
That's really,
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
That's
It
really
really
true, Rebecca.
impacted my life.
Yeah.
You know, the one other thought along this topic of training is that the goal in parenthood also is releasing eventually.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Launching.
So,
right?
exactly.
Yeah.
So therefore, you don't want to wait in our culture where a child graduates at 18, goes off to college
Mhm.
perhaps or career. You don't want to wait till then
Mhm.
to give them the opportunities
Mhm.
to make decisions, to
Yeah.
be released, to be free. So philosophically, one of the ways that I think parenting should be approached is I want to,
Mhm.
in increasing ways, starting a lot earlier than most parents start,
Mhm.
to
Yeah.
give them
That's so good.
age appropriate
Yeah.
opportunity to make decisions,
That's
so that
good.
by the time, for instance, so our kids were maybe a junior in high school, it wasn't so much, no, I won't let you go to that party. It's,
Yeah.
I tell you what, I really trust your walk with the Lord.
Mhm.
Or I'm not sure if I trust your walk with the Lord,
Right.
but I want to give you opportunity
Yeah.
to learn, to listen, and use wisdom.
Yeah.
Why don't you pray about it, and I'll go with what you decide.
Yeah.
And then you
yeah.
go and you bite your nails and you wonder, what in the world have I just
No.
done? But
Right.
usually our kids, it was really funny, usually they hated that.
Oh, I
And
bet
they were
did.
usually harder on themselves than I would have been.
Oh my gosh, Dad, just put it back on me. I know what he would say. He would say I shouldn't go, or I can't, or
Sure.
whatever it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
But by the time they're a senior, for instance, there were a few directive decisions
Mhm.
because I wanted not only to give them that opportunity,
That's
but I
right.
wanted them to have opportunity to make bad decisions when I was still around, when Penny was still around,
Mhm.
when we can help lift them up and
Yeah.
help
process that with
exactly,
them.
rather
Yeah.
than waiting for them to be
That's so
off
good.
at a college or out in a
Mhm.
career or
Yeah.
married, and all of a sudden no one is there to help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
help.
Guide
That's so
you.
good.
Yeah.
That's so good. That's so wise. We could talk about this for hours. I know this topic of parenting, but just to kind of wrap it up, what would you say to the parent who's maybe a single parent?
Mhm.
Maybe they're not a single parent, but
Mhm.
their spouse really isn't super involved in
Mm-hmm.
parenting, or they're not on the same page.
Mhm.
Maybe their spouse isn't walking with the Lord, doesn't have the
Mhm.
same values or philosophy in parenting.
Mhm.
What would you say just if they're feeling
Yeah.
discouraged or
Mhm.
hopeless to encourage
Great
them?
question. Do you want me to kick it off?
Sure.
Okay. Well, one thing I just want to share before we launch into that is just the importance, if you are married and you're both committed to Jesus and walking with Him, just the value of being a united front.
Oh,
Don't
yeah.
let the kids pit you against each other,
Yeah,
and they
yeah.
will. They're smart
They
little
do.
little
I know
guys
mine
and
try to.
girls, And so we just said in front of them, we will present a united front. Now, behind closed doors, we might discuss something and say, you know what, I don't totally agree with that, and that's okay.
Right.
But to really present that united front, but sometimes you're in a situation where that's just not, you're
Right.
not able to do. Maybe you are a single parent, or maybe you're married to someone who just won't cooperate with that. And, we just live in an imperfect world.
Right.
But the one thing to always remember is that you have a wonderful friend in Jesus,
Amen.
and that our kids, even if one parent is
Mhm.
modeling the relationship and walking with Jesus, the kids won't forget that. They
Yeah.
may say, Dad really walked with Jesus, but Mom
Yeah.
didn't, and they may just notice it. And as they are adults, they will notice that at times. And it's really hard if you are all alone to do that. But I would also say, make sure that you stay in community. Church community is so helpful for the single mom or the single dad that just needs support. And sometimes, we just get so busy, we pull out of community. But we really do need to have other relationships that can pray for us and hold us up during those times.
Yeah, no, I think that's excellent. I don't have much to add other than to say that being involved in community also allows there to be other models, even if you don't have your parents or grandparents or others around to be involved with your children or a spouse, there can be friends and other individuals and Sunday school teachers and that the kids know and the kids see. But you need it for yourself to be in community. You need it for your children, and those are tough situations. But even in those tough situations, God allows the modeling and the sacrifices one may have to make because of difficult situations to be something really valuable for the kids.
Right. And just like I think we recognize that God has extended us grace upon a grace that we don't deserve. We trust that our kids are really his kids, and he's going to do the same for them.
He loves
He's going to
them.
fill in the gaps. He's going to take care of them.
So true. So true.
Yeah, and that will be part of their story.
Yeah. Good. Well, just to wrap up, just with this, I know with this past year, with you guys' retirement in the last few years, with COVID, really depending with your health. I know you guys haven't been able to be around as much as I'm sure you would love to be.
Yeah.
But just to the whole church, what do you not talking about parenting, what do you want to say to just VCDC family here?
Okay. Well, I have a lot to say, but one of the things I just wanted to give a quick update so you'd understand where we're coming from. I am in what they call, I have multiple myeloma, and I am in the stage called the refractory stage. And basically that's when most of the chemos just aren't working anymore. And so I was told that a few months back, and it was hard to hear, but we asked our doctor to please, he's a believer, and we just have a great relationship. And we said, please be honest with us, brutally honest. We could handle it. We know, we believe in the afterlife and going to heaven and all those good things. And he said, nothing's working. And he said, it really shortens down the original prognosis that I gave you. And he said, it may be a matter of months or maybe a matter of a couple of years. But he said, you could at any moment just take a real dive down and things could go south real quick. And, we were thankful. We were sad. We both were teary, but we both, were thankful that we had that information. But one of the things that it's done for us, the whole experience from 6 years ago and walking through this has really made us look at life very differently than we did before. We're all living in that place that every one of us are going to die. 100 years from now, probably not one of us are going to be still around, And we're all going to go on. When you have a terminal, incurable disease, it just brings that to life, to home for you a little bit more. But it's really focused us on the things that are important in life. And it's also caused us to really press in deeper to our relationship with the Lord. I do not know how people do it without Jesus. But it presses me into going to the Lord and saying, God, I need strength for this and show me what's important. I want to live today as it's the most important day ever. And I want to follow you today in what I'm doing. And it really does. What it does for me as I surrender to that, it brings just incredible peace. Then if I'm constantly kicking against the diagnosis, just kind of say, give me peace for today. And I'm not going to worry about what next month may bring. It may be really hard what I'm facing next month, but I have to trust him today, and I don't have grace for that future, but to give your life to pressing into him. That's the absolute most important thing. And also just to think, my family, I want to make sure that we've sat down with all of our kids and discussed this. And we've had all these great discussions about things that really matter, just making sure that we've said everything we need to say. And we've talked about those things. And so it's really impacted the way that we've lived. Do you want to add to that?
That was excellent. Life is investments.
Yeah.
And you get an understanding when you're facing the limitations of this life, what Jesus talked about in his challenge to love one another, his challenge to love your enemies, his admonition to really think how we invest in other people, how we invest in our marriages, how we invest in our children. So, hopefully for most, it won't take, crisis to bring people to that. But, especially in the culture as it is today and in our society, I think that the encouragement I would have for anyone I talk to, for the church, would be to love well, to think, is this issue important enough for there to be division? People that know me know that I have strong opinions about a lot of things, but my strong opinions hopefully never will be so strong that it would interrupt a person feeling loved, seeing that I love them, understanding that acceptance isn't based on what is being done or not done, or viewed or believed or not believed. And I think just having that kind of pause in life to say, how am I prioritizing my life? How am I prioritizing my walk with Jesus? And am I loving well? That's pretty important.
And one last little thing to add to that, the Bible says they will know we are Christians by our love. And it's just really good to stop and say, over this political issue or whatever, would they know I'm a Christian by my love? And am I, even though we have differences, am I still pressing in to love this brother or sister that I will spend eternity with? And am I modeling love, the love of Christ during this time?
There's a story that's passed down through Christian history about the Apostle John. Before he died, was old man carried into meetings, and they would sit him down, and after they brought him into a meeting, and they'd say, "Brother, do you have anything to say to us?" And over in each of those situations, John just looked at the people and just said, "Brothers and sisters, just love one another." And there's something about that we really need to love well if we want to be a reflection of who Jesus is.
When it all comes down to it, it's really pretty simple. It's
Very.
complicated to walk out.
Oh boy.
But it really is. It comes down to that. Well, you were talking about investment. I know I speak on behalf of the whole church. We thank you guys just for your faithful investment in all of our lives just over the years. And Penny, we talk about all the time, we're living in the already and not yet of the kingdom, and we're praying for the already, but we recognize the not yet as a possibility. And so we will continue to be praying for both of you and for God to move and bring healing. But we know that thankfully Jesus gets the final say.
He does.
Nobody else does.
He has my days numbered.
And he knows that. And has known that from the beginning of eternity. So just thank you both so much. I wish we could just keep going for hours on this. But thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having us. We're honored.
Thank you.